Kenya's President William Ruto has unveiled his cabinet 2 weeks after he was sworn in as Kenya's fifth head of state. Dr. Ruto stated that Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua will, in addition, chair intergovernmental relations and chair constitutional commissions. The president named Macharia Munene as a Prime Minister Cabinet Secretary, saying the position is the most senior office after the President and Vice President. The names will now be forwarded to Parliament for vetting and approval. President Ruto also appointed Harriet Chigai as the advisor on women's rights. He's announced that Inspector General of Police Hilary Mutayambai has applied to proceed on terminal leave for the remaining 6 months of his remaining contract due to health problems. The President further announced the Director of Criminal Investigations, George Kinoti, has handed in his resignations. Right, for more on this, Macharia Munene is Professor of International Relations, United States International University in Nairobi, Kenya. He joins us now to speak about these developments. Professor, good to have you once again. What are your reactions on just some of the names that we've mentioned and why in particular those names for those positions?
Thank you. Well, it was expected that the president would name his cabinet sooner than later. So it was just timely when he did it. People are beginning to get anxious as to when he would do that. So doing that, lay down the concern, the anxiety, and it shows him to be active going forward. As to the people who are appointed or nominated to be appointed, many of them are people who are expected to be appointed because they have been with President Ruto in the campaign trenches. Others were kind of in the background, but a lot of them will be seen to be loyalists to the president. They also represent diversity, the face of Kenya, as it is usually called. There is an attempt to improve the gender parity by having 7 women in the cabinet, not to mention even the new positions that are actually fresh, like the advisor to the gender advisor and the advisor on national security. These are new positions that he has created for that purpose. So he seems to be eager to be seen, be running, hit the ground running, and then let people judge him once he has performed.
Okay.
He's appointed very people, like the Treasury Secretary, who is a former governor of the central bank, therefore supposedly knows the money issues very well.
And the gender aspect of it, how is the president expected to balance that? Because we've just mentioned just a few positions, but what is the balance of power there when he names his full cabinet?
Well, he's named the full cabinet, 22 or so ministers, but there are very many other positions waiting to be filled, like those of permanent secretaries who are actually the accounting officers in the ministries. The position of assistant ministers, sometimes called the CAS, which will be used to reward some of the other supporters that could not reach the top, because the Constitution puts a limit as to how many people can be in the cabinet, but it says very little or nothing about the assistants, whether there should be or should not be. And former President Uhuru found a way of using it. It was actually argued before. It was only a question of how to go about it. So there are a lot of appointments, as the president said, that are coming. The question is how he will balance those. How many more women will be in those key positions that are both policy making and implementation. He's got about, something like 60 or 70 people that's at his disposal to appoint. And that within the gender balancing and the face of Kenya can be examined more closely than at present. This time he was limited by the Constitution as to the number of people you can have.
All right. Now, we understand that Abraham Kithure Kindiki is also another strategic appointment. So from the Supreme Court into the President's cabinet, what is expected in terms of the value to be added there? And as you said, a lot of them is because they are loyalists. What in particular is the reward for this appointment?
Well, Kindiki is a good lawyer. He represented Ruto and Uhuru at the ICC, The Hague. Therefore, he's well known for that. And he joined the Ruto camp very early. And he was representing the president in the Supreme Court case that was when the opposition challenged it. And he was very forceful in his presentation because he did point out that there are some people who are criminals, and they should not be in the courts arguing, they should be somewhere else. Now, being given that key docket, because internal security is a key document in the country, is in charge of all law enforcement activities, one way or the other. So we don't know whether it means that he will have some investigations that were ignored before conducted. He was very forceful about the misbehavior with some people at Bomas, and we don't know whether he will constitute a commission to investigate the misbehavior at Bomas. But he's a very forceful person. He's kind of likable, but also very adamant when it comes to things. He stands his position.
Simon Cholegu is the only one who was in former President Kenyatta's cabinet that is part of this cabinet, but he's been moved from Labour to the Ministry of Small and Medium Enterprises. Share with us your thinking around this development.
Well, he's not the only one. Monica Juma is there.
Okay.
The cabinet secretary, the National Security Advisor with a cabinet position, status. So you can say that there are two of them. But in deciding who goes where, I think the president received quite a bit of advice, diverse advice, and thought maybe somebody may be better somewhere else than what some other people would think. Yes, there were people who were expected to hold particular dockets, but in his wisdom, he decided that it should be somewhere else. And there were others who were expected to be in the cabinet, and they were not appointed. So there are these questions that are coming up. Why was so-and-so left out? Or why was so-and-so included, and people didn't think about him before? And why is this person not in that docket and is in the other, like the question you asked him? So it's up to the president to explain why he thought that somebody should be in one position and not another. But there are some positions you can explain, which are very clear why somebody was appointed to that office.
All right, and the challenges ahead of them, as we mentioned, the economy, high inflation, how do you expect them to perform against the previous administration?
Well, the economy is, they came to office on promises of fixing the economy, lowering the cost of living. How they do that is another matter, but they're just beginning. There is some goodwill in the country. They should be given time to put their house in order. With the Treasury Secretary, Ndungu, who was governor before the central bank, there may be some direction because the governor was actually advising behind the scenes. He's not very visible, but people know him. As for that, maybe he's a subscriber to the bottom-up economy. But we see in the initial stages is figuring out long-term lowering of the cost of living in terms of prices. And that's why they have gone for fertilizers as the inducements to productivity.